The Timeline is a Blue Wire podcast. Welcome to the Timeline of Phoenix Suns podcast. My name is Mike, as always, here with Sam. How you doing, Sam?
I'm doing great, Mike. Thanks for asking. As always, the Suns have wrapped up a long road trip, longest road trip of the season to this point, I want to say, 7 games.
Longest period. I think they don't have any longer ones.
Yeah, and some important events coming up this week. I'm not sure if you know, but there's this little event called the NBA trade deadline coming up in about 72 hours. So obviously expect a podcast from us, people, by the way. If anything is to happen later this week on Thursday, we'll be ready to record. We're going to spend the most of this podcast, all of the second half and just most of the vast majority of this podcast talking with one of our friends of the pod in Dan Favale. But before that, just did you have any thoughts that you wanted to get off your chest regarding the recent road trip?
I think, well, we're coming off of, I think, one of the more interesting games that happened, and that was Bradley Beal returning to Washington to play at the very first time as an opponent in that arena, and he was amazing. He had his best game for the Suns this season, and it was just a fascinating thing, I think, to watch. And to see the fans were really gracious. They gave him a lot of love and respect. And he clearly knows that building and plays really well there. And it was cool to see. 11 years for a single team. I think it was the longest outside of Steph Curry before he was traded of anyone in the NBA, from what I remember, because Udonis Haslem was gone.
Have you spent 11 years doing anything?
No.
Like, besides living? Have you ever spent 11 years living in the same place?
No, I was just thinking about that. No, I've been at this house I'm in for almost 10 years, so that's not quite there, but yeah. Yeah. That's a really long time.
11 years at a job? Have you done that?
No, I haven't. Have you?
Yeah, there you go. No, absolutely
not,
dude. I'm like,
you'd be like 12, yeah.
I'm like 12 years. I'm like 12 years old, man. That's not even possible. So I certainly haven't put in that much skin in the game. This podcast, I consider it a major success that we're here in season number 6.
6, yeah.
But we have not done 11. 11 is a long time. Yeah, just to your point, Brad was great. 16 for 21 from the field, 4 for 5 from deep. Perfect 7 for 7 from the free throw line. Someone pointed out to me, and I apologize, I forget who, but the 7th game in the last 10 where the Suns have a 40-point score.
Yeah.
And obviously the Washington game a little bit special because it was finally Brad's chance to do it, but we got a couple from KD. We've had several from Book, and now just the big 3 entirely aligning. 7 of the last 10 games of 40-point score is quite the accomplishment.
It's really amazing, and I think for him to do it there, I think probably meant a lot. But from a Suns fan perspective, ever since he got hammered in the nose, he was kind of not great offensively. Now, he still brought a lot to the Suns with his dribbling, his passing, his penetration. He was still capable of being effective on the floor. But I think the entire tenor of the 7-game road trip was impacted by him getting hit in the face. And to see him have a great game was great, I think, from our perspective, and probably just felt really good for him to actually do it in that scenario, in that situation that he was in. In particular, in that game, Devin Booker struggled and was in foul trouble early and just never really got his rhythm back after being in foul trouble. So perfect timing. Not that it takes all 3 of these guys to play well to beat the Washington Wizards right now, but it's definitely helpful that the Suns have guys that can step up in the way that he did. I mean, he's like, if you look at the scoring, like he's the only one over 20 and he had 43. Really, really effective game for him. I think he spent a game and a half missing every 3-pointer he attempted and was 4 for 5 from 3. I think that was really telling. Maybe just getting used to playing in the mask. I'm not sure how long he's going to wear that, but
part of it is, yeah, I think you can still even tell sometimes when he's dribbling that he's not sure quite where he is, like in terms of his coordinates, but he'll figure it out. And, you know, this was a great step for him. It was such a relief to have an end-to-end blowout for the Suns, I think, and to have such a great offensive performance where they score 140 points, such that Brad didn't even really get a chance to play much in the fourth quarter, if at all. However, the next step for him is to get some of these fourth quarter demons off his back, because we've pointed out in the past, maybe it was on a recent Patreon episode, but he is the guy among the big three who has struggled the most in the fourth quarter specifically. Would be great to see him get going in maybe a clutch game or two going forward.
You know, it's funny with him. I think we saw this moment with Devin Booker where he was so adamant on getting other people involved that in some sense he lost kind of the juice, the magic that he had as a player. And, you know, Kevin Durant kind of went to him, we know the story, and said, hey, stop looking for me. Just go score. And then he's been great ever since. That led to the January. You know, Kevin Durant, if he'd like to take credit for it, I think he can, because it happened right after he said that. It led to the January that was his best month of the season by a lot. And he was just reminded that he's Devin Booker. And I do think that Bradley Beal has done such a good job getting other guys involved, but maybe needed a reminder that he's Bradley Beal. And hopefully this Washington game is exactly that kind of reminder, because there will be times where, we don't need him to be fill in the blank point guard. We need him to be Bradley Beal. And in this game, he needed to be in order for the Suns to win, because of the way that Devin Booker was in foul trouble. And, you know, I think Kevin Durant was playing fine and just kind of deferred to him when he was heating up.
KD took 9 shots in this game, but he could have taken 22 if he had to. Yeah. It was just, demonstrating the privilege that it is to finally have 15 straight games of these three playing together.
Yeah, exactly. And, it's just nice to see him. And I'm hoping that what we're seeing is him just getting back to just how capable he could be as a scorer. And now I think that's really, it was starting before he was elbowed in the face. I think that's really, when you look at how well the Suns offense has played recently, I think you had the stats in the last 10 games. They were number 1 in offensive rating. 7 of those 10 are on the road, which is impressive enough as it is. And it's like there's clearly another gear left, right? I don't think it's quite the best that it could be, because Bradley Beal could play even better.
He could play even better, and obviously as we go forth in our conversation with Dan and we talk about other guys that they could bring in at the trade deadline, of course it could always be better, but we're talking about an offensive rating over the past 10 games of give or take 123. They're neck and neck with the one of the other hottest teams in the NBA, the Los Angeles Clippers, who have had an insane offensive rating over the past month, but are currently number 2 in that stretch. I think that's about the ceiling of what the offense is. Like, it could hover around 125 at its best. Sure, it could get a little bit better, but it's the defense certainly that needs to improve. I think one recent example of that was, before this Washington game, it was really important that they closed out the road trip on the right foot, because we did that Atlanta game just before on playback. And I remember our friend David joined us for that one too, and the three of us were just really disappointed with the defensive scheme, and not necessarily like a good amount of experimentation coming in that game from Vogel. So not necessarily thinking that it meant a whole lot for how they were going to play defense for the rest of the season going forward, but just disappointed with the execution. And so most of the improvement going forward is going to be on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, and that's something that they probably will try, or at least attempt to address as we get closer and closer to the trade deadline. But there is a lot of internal improvement that could come from that. I think that Atlanta game was particularly frustrating, and I think there was so much of it where the personnel was not quite right to guard the way that they were guarding, but a lot of it was just them not knowing where they should be, because they don't do it very often.
For those who maybe didn't watch that game or can't remember, since it could have been a week ago for some of you listening by now, they switched every ball screen, including the bigs. Normally the Suns do a pretty good job of switching 1 through 4 and then keeping the 5 back, either back and drop coverage or show and recover. And in this one, they were consistently switching their bigs onto Trae Young and DeJounte Murray and just letting them get cooked. And it just didn't make sense. We were questioning why it was happening at the beginning, and it never worked out.
And I think what was frustrating about that, too, is I think you can say, well, if you're switching Nurkic onto Trae Young, whatever, like that's you're sort of conceding that Trae Young's going to try and score against him. but they were consistently creating at the rim when Nurkic was out at the perimeter because nobody was stepping up and guarding correctly as the low man to stop any drives, any dump-off passes, any lobs at the rim. Unless Nurkic was in there, which, as we said, because they were switching him, he often wasn't. So, you're conceding one thing at one end and then giving wide-open dunks at the other. That's a communication issue. That's, I think, in some sense, you could blame it on the coaches. You could blame it on the players. We had that conversation with Kellen on the playback a little bit. It's really not the point. It's just that they need to know it better, and maybe that comes from the coaching. Maybe that comes from the players just not having done that very often. But they can communicate better. They can play better on that end of the ball. They have their next few games are Milwaukee, Utah, and then they have Golden State on ABC. Big game on the 10th before the All-Star break. That could be the next time they try something like that. You don't really need to do that the same way against the Warriors as you used to, but it wouldn't hurt. I'm not sure if they're going to try that any more often. Maybe even, I guess, against Dame in Milwaukee.
Yeah,
if you want to
huge test Milwaukee tomorrow. I think it would be a stupid way to guard Dame, especially given the offensive rebounding threat that the rest of the Bucks players are. But sure, theoretically, if you just want to stop quick guards who can get around screens like Dame and Steph, it's a choice. It's something you can do.
Yeah. So that'll be interesting to see. I'm happy they got another win after that. Just all in all, 7-game road trip, 4-3. You feel good about that? Bad about that? I mean, you have to factor in the Bradley Beal attempted assault in the middle of it.
Attempted assault. And look, again, we kind of got a little bit negative here. We're talking about the defense, but the offense has been sensational. And their pace is up to top 10 in the league over the last 10 games. I really think they've started committing themselves to playing with great pace. So, I think we're getting good results here. I think you needed that win against Washington to really feel good about it. If they had squeaked by in a 2-point victory against Washington, I maybe wouldn't be singing their praises as much, but they ended it the right way. They went 4-3. And a couple weeks ago, I've mentioned this a couple times now, but we talked about how they had to start playing good teams and proving themselves. And, they've been slowly gaining some momentum with sprinkling in victories against New Orleans here and Dallas there and Indiana there. And now the big test comes. Like, you've been working up to this moment, baby steps, little by little. Now you start to play the Milwaukees of the league and the Bostons of the league and the Oklahoma City and Minnesotas of the league even. These other teams that they haven't gotten a whole lot of opportunities against up until this point. They're all coming now in the next month or two. I feel good about where they are going into the deadline, knowing that they put in a lot of work as of late.
Yeah, I think I feel the same way. I think if Bradley Beal was just fully healthy, I think 5-2 would have felt a lot better than 4-3, but 4-3, given the circumstances, okay, that's the longest one. And by the way, I think they have a really good record on the road right now, maybe even the best in the NBA as far as win percentage of any team, maybe outside of the Boston Celtics.
Maybe Boston, yeah, I'll check that for you.
And if you just give them the credit for what that is, if they can figure it out at home a little bit better, you can't get mad at the way they've played on the road so far this season, given the issues that they've run into. Recently, too, just want to give quick shout-outs before we get over to our conversation with Dan, talking about the trade deadline. Yusuf Nurkic had probably his best game. You saw it in person in Brooklyn. He played really, really well, so it's nice to see him. They ran the offense basically through him for long stretches of the game there, and he came through, played really well. Grayson Allen rolled his ankle. Eric Gordon had to step into the starting lineup. They didn't really miss a beat when Eric Gordon was in there. They looked really good with Eric Gordon playing in that. So shout out to him for, I think, getting it back a little bit recently after that wrist injury. Seems to look more like himself lately, playing a little bit better. And then lastly, Bol is back. And that's just nice to see in general.
Big news.
Yeah.
Big news. And played well, too, in his first game back. So, yeah, that's huge. Just to button this up a little bit, the Celtics are 15-9 on the road. The Suns are 15-10. So we're close.
They're right there. We're
very close. Yeah. Shout out, by the way, a quick shout out here. Memphis Grizzlies, 13-14 on the road.
Interesting.
As the 13th seed in the Western Conference. That's just really weird.
Yeah. All right. Anyone, before we get to our conversation with Dan, anyone play their way into being untradeable recently?
Untradeable
on the Suns. Drew Eubanks had a few good games,
Bradley
Beal has
Bradley Beal has no trade clause.
So he's the only guy then.
So I think he's untradeable. Devin Booker and Kevin Durant, not planning on moving him here at the deadline. A lot of other guys are on the table, so I'm excited to talk about it with Dan.
Is probably safe as well, but yes.
Yes.
All right, we'll get over to that after a quick break. We'll talk about all of our options when it comes to the trade deadline, and we'll throw out a bunch of fake trades at Dan and get his reaction. So we'll be right back with our friend Dan. All right, joining us, longtime friend of the podcast, host of the Hardwood Knocks podcast, and writer at Bleacher Report, Dan Favale. Dan, how are you doing?
I am doing spectacular now that you call me a good friend of the podcast. I thought our relationship was a little bit up in the air coming in, so it's nice to have it clarified.
Well, we'll see
Dan,
at the end of the we'll give a judgment at the end of the podcast where our friendship is at that point as well.
Dan, there is no one I would rather talk through slop season with than you, my friend. Or at least if there is, it's a very short list.
I was about
so
to say, Jake Fisher better be on it as the inventor of the slop season.
You know, Jake Fisher has never been on this pod. Am I right, Mike? We haven't
no.
successfully gotten Jake Fisher on this pod.
We've had him on a couple times, and he is what I like about him as a newsbreaker is he's not unafraid to like give his opinion or have an actual personality in the stuff he's writing or saying. And so he's super nice too. And that's always nice when you see like one of these primary newsbreakers or just NBA content creators that are, they seem like they're good people.
Yeah. Yeah, he does. But I'd still rather have you on, Dan. I mean,
I'm gonna cry. If this was video, thank God it's not video. I'm all misty-eyed.
So Sam and I were talking about the concept of doing a podcast for the trade deadline and a preview for the trade deadline. And the thing that I kept coming back to with Sam is how easy it is as guys who are really close to the team and really follow just the Suns. And, we follow the rest of the NBA, but at a distance compared to the Suns, and how important it is to have someone to bring proper perspective to our fake trades. So that's what you're here to judge us. I mean, ultimately, right? You're here to tell us if we are being insane or if we are being realistic. And we're relying on you to do that as we throw some fake trades at you later in this episode. Are you prepared for that, first of all?
Yes, I'm very excited because normally I'm the one that has to give, when I go on podcasts, the trades. And so I like responding. So I'm very excited for this exercise.
We didn't ask you to come up with any trades. If you have any you like really want to vouch for, we could get there later on.
I did just publish I have a big board of trade targets for every team. It was like a 12,000 word article. So I am ready for that, but I'm excited to hear your ideas, especially
Dan
because
Favale fashion 12,000 word article. That's
no one,
dude. That's what I'm saying. February is you in your bag. I was like, there's no one else I want to talk to right now.
Yeah, I will say I'm also excited to talk to you guys because we seem to align on what the Suns actually need. Where it feels like there's still the remnants of they got to get another point guard type in there, and you guys are like, no, like it's wings and bigs. Like let's stop.
Yeah.
That's right.
I mean, that already puts you ahead of all of the other national guys. Just a clear understanding of what the Suns need. How do you feel about the Suns so far this season? I know it's been up and down. It's clicking a little bit more lately. I think everyone who listens to this podcast is aware of how it's going. But how are you feeling about it so far?
I definitely am feeling like I overestimated how they did on the minimum contract market or underestimated like the level of inconsistency that comes with those guys who were available. But I'm like, I don't know. When I see them at like their best, I just can't bring myself to be concerned. And one of the things that stood out, and this is now a couple days old, but like part of the fourth quarter problems, someone just needs to hit a wide open jumper. We can talk about their turnovers, but like they have they have like a 63 or 64 effective field goal rate on wide open jumpers through the first three quarters. That plummets to somewhere, I think it's like 46.4 in the fourth, which is the worst mark in the league. And so it's just like, you have level of shot makers, even if Devin Booker's not starting for the first few minutes of that quarter, like this just has to normalize. And so there are things that they need and there are things to be concerned about. But I look at this team and when we've seen them at what I believe to be their peak or their near peak, I'm just like, they could still win it all. Like that's just where I'm at with this team.
Glad to see you still on board. A little surprised too. I have to be honest, just because it's taken so long for us. And I know you've always been an ardent Suns defender, and at least for as long as we've known you, Dan. But
for as long as they've been good.
For as long as they've been good.
I'm a Suns bandwagoner. I'm a fair weather Suns
That's
person.
the right way to be, yeah.
it's taken so long into the season to even get a couple hundred minutes of the big three together. And now that we've seen it, obviously we see the offensive rating, the heights that they can potentially attain. And you're right. Fourth quarter still struggles. Guys like Grayson Allen becoming mediocre shooters, Eric Gordon becoming mediocre shooters in the fourth quarter. None of that helps either. We've talked about that on the pod in the past. There's a lot of teams cooking in the Western Conference.
Yeah.
So, there's like a clear tier of 4 teams, and I don't know how you don't necessarily have to rank them. You can if you desire ranking them right now, but there's a clear 4 teams ahead of the Suns in the Western Conference, and we only have so many games here to kind of build that continuity towards the playoffs to be able to potentially compete with those 4 teams. And additionally, we're going to talk about some trade ideas here, obviously, but as the Suns are not working with a lot in terms of assets. It's going to be a lot of Nazir Little trades here that we talk about for the rest of the pod. So where would, if you were James Jones just going into this trade deadline, where would your concern level be as you try and think about, or how much are you even thinking about, we need to figure out how we can beat the Nuggets specifically, or the Clippers specifically, or these specific matchups in the Western Conference?
I mean, I would be concerned, but I think 2 things that stand out is, one, let's believe that the Clippers are going to be healthy when we get to it. I mean, Kawhi only missing, I think, 4 games to this point is absolutely massive, and then also a little concerning because it's well, what is his body going to be like in April and May? And then I think we all, even myself, might be underestimating when it comes to Minnesota and Oklahoma City, how if they don't make moves to address some of their smaller needs, that they just might be not pumpkins, but these are teams, these cores that have not played together at the highest level in those moments, or in the Thunder's case, have these players who have been in those super high stakes moments time and again. Yeah. And you look at a Suns team where it's Devin Booker's been there, Kevin Durant has been there, Bradley Beal used to go there in Washington.
Bradley Beal has not been there, but
since
we love him anyway.
2018 he hasn't. But
I mean, he had some caps lock moments.
He's been in the conference finals.
Yeah. So I think that's really huge, is that if you can get into the postseason in one piece, I think that's how you actually need to approach this trade deadline, is if these 3 are healthy, I think they're right in, we say there's 4 teams in front of them, but if you're asking me right now, if teams don't make a move, do I think the Timberwolves or the Suns are more likely to win the title? My answer is probably going to be the Suns, just because I'm going to trust that track record of their top 3, or their ability to do this dynamic stuff on offense.
Yeah, and it's, when we look at these trades, and I think Sam and I, we haven't talked about what each of us did. We kind of claimed we did kind of a draft of guys before we planned out our trades, but we haven't talked about what the trades are for a couple of guys.
Couple wild cards in here too. Got to keep it fresh, but
yeah. So we haven't talked about all of them, but I think we're pretty much on the same page in that this isn't a team where we're talking about, the big 3's all there, right? They're all staying together. We're not planning on trading any of those 3 guys. And then the starting lineup itself, if you put Grayson Allen and Yusuf Nurkic in it, has been working really well. They're kind of demolishing teams. The reason they've been winning games while getting destroyed in the fourth quarter is because the starting lineup is demolishing teams at the beginning of the first and third quarter. So that seems to be working well. And you talked about maybe overestimating some of the minimum guys. So did we, and maybe even on your podcast, Dan, Sam and I did that a little bit, in that the inconsistencies have been a problem. So what we're trying to solve, I think, with these trades, and this is particularly, I think, for people who maybe are listening to this trade episode who don't listen to every episode of this podcast, what we're trying to solve, I think, there's 3 positions that you could identify that are needs for the Suns. Backup point guard, you can say that. Bigger wings who could defend, which is something that Sam and I have been on, because they play small. I mean, their best lineup right now is probably Kevin Durant at center with 4 shooting guards playing with him, basically. and a backup big, because Drew Eubanks has been massively disappointing up to this point of the season. But if we had to rank those, which we have done on our podcast, we put the wing first, a big wing, a backup big second, and then the point guard last. Now, the point guard really is insurance in case any of the big 3 miss any time. That's really what the Suns, I think, could use a backup point guard for. So not important for the playoffs. So not a huge priority as far as if this team is healthy. First of all, do you agree with that ranking, Dan?
Yeah, I would. And I think you hit it on the head, too, with talking about it in the context of the playoffs, where maybe that third ball handler, or even if we're talking about a big, because of how well Nurkic has played for a lot of this season and having the lever to pull of Kevin Durant at the 5, you have to ask yourself, how many minutes is player X or archetype X going to log for us in the playoffs? And I think a lot of people have lost this with the Nuggets, whereas, they really need a different type of backup big. And it's Jokic plays 40 minutes in the playoffs, and the rest will just be filled by Aaron Gordon. And so, that's, I think, having the wing up there, because that's where also a lot of their inconsistency has come from, is you kind of just see, what is Josh Okogie doing to us on offense, or is Keita Bates-Diop going through one of his, they're peaks and plunges with him, it feels like.
Yeah.
So
his 20-game-long plunge versus a 3-game peak.
3-game peak, yeah. And it's Keita Bates-Diop has disappointed. Yuta Watanabe has.
That broke my heart. If you're talking about, you guys might have been. You guys might have been talking people up on my podcast. I probably talked up Yuta Watanabe to you guys through the roof, and that has not looked too hot.
It's just all his confidence is gone, and maybe the skill wasn't quite there as much as we hoped to begin with. But if the confidence is also gone, then how are you going to fix that? Metu had some good play early on and just kind of cratered recently, and it's those are the main guys. Okogie is we know what we're going to get out of Okogie at this point. He's an absolute negative offensively at all times. Other than offensive rebounds, I'll give him credit there. And he's a great defender who maybe is a little out of his depth when he's guarding a true offensive star. So, he's still playable, I think, at times in the regular season. He's probably the best wing off the bench right now. And that's why we need to solve this problem, right?
Yeah.
Right. So, some of these trades... Mm-hmm.
Shout out to Eric Gordon. I just want to jump in and say, because you're talking about this whole group of players, it's very clear. Eric Gordon is the one player who signed to the Suns in the offseason that signed for a minimum deal, was clearly not a minimum player, and he has proven that. Everyone else is in their own little tier of struggling mightily.
And so, I think some of these trades... Maybe to almost lower expectations if you're expecting big sort of league-changing trades, if you're listening. Some of these trades are just to solve having a playable wing off the bench, period, in some sense. Sometimes we're trying to upgrade dramatically, but in some senses, I think we're just going to say, this guy is not somebody who just won't play at all for 15 games because he was awful. We're trying to find somebody who can play as long as he's healthy on a regular basis for this team. So I think that's where we'll start, and then we'll go through some of these trades. We do have to talk about one that's just been a rumor that Sam and I actually haven't talked about on this podcast at all, and that is that the Suns were interested in Miles Bridges. Now, this is not... Sam and I have sort of been on the same page of this potential idea for a trade, and that is that it's just not worth it. It's just not worth it to give up any assets for a player that comes with this level of controversy. And truthfully, I don't want to root for him personally. And I understand that some people, they value winning above all, and that's all they care about in this situation. I'm not that type of person, and if you're a weirdo who is that kind of person, leave everyone who isn't that kind of person alone, because those people who don't want to root for somebody like this, that's pretty normal behavior, I think, from a person. I don't want to spend too long on this trade, because basically what I'm hearing is that right now it's pretty much dead, and I think Gambo was hinting at that on the radio here in Phoenix recently as well. So
is that a V-Hill bomb?
No.
V-Hill bomb live? Okay.
Wait, V-Hill volcano?
These last few days before the trade deadline, this is when everything actually happens anyway, so who knows what's going to happen in the next few days. Because, everyone wants a first-round pick for a player right now, but 2 days from now, maybe not. I mean, things can change right before the deadline if they don't want that. I personally, even basketball-wise, don't find him to be a great fit with exactly what the Suns need anyway, other than being like a playable wing off the bench for the Suns. That's something that he could have potentially been, or could be if this does happen. But I don't know, Sam, do you have, before we get to Dan's thoughts on it, Sam, do you have any thoughts on this? We haven't talked about it on the podcast.
Yeah.
I know you mentioned it on Twitter, but...
Yeah, I mentioned it on Twitter because, look, the rumors got really hot this weekend, and I felt I needed to say something about it. I basically have the same feelings where clearly he's a better basketball player in a vacuum than all of the guys we're probably going to talk about over the course of the rest of this episode. That still doesn't mean, in my opinion, that he's properly a fit for exactly what the Suns are looking for. He's kind of just a scorer who has always been on losing teams and hasn't had a ton of impact on that end. Nor is he like, I don't know, I had a lot of people trying, like, in my replies being like, I said Miles Bridges is not a great rebounder. They were like, what are you talking about? He gets 7 rebounds in 38 minutes per game. He's a great rebounder. And it's like, no, that's not how that stat works. But yeah, so I'm not huge on the player that he is, but also just in terms of like wanting to sign up for the baggage that comes with it. You know, you'll have a lot of people who are making the point of he deserves a second chance, who conveniently ignore the fact that he already had his second chance and signed a new contract this past summer, and then after that violated a protection order back in October where he threw pool balls at the car of his ex-girlfriend with his 2 children inside. And that happened after he already received his second chance, right? So, you know, this to me is not a case of a guy who has exhibited enough effort towards reform to really want to take on any of the controversy that comes with it. I'm just not in support of it, and yeah, if the rumor is dead, as you're saying, Mike, that's a welcome news for me. But what do you think?
I'm hoping for that as well. Yeah,
I think Sam hit it on the head. Where I don't want to be an arbiter of morality here, but we're not looking at someone who seems like he's made strides toward redemption. Even let's forget about the initial, but I don't want to forget. But there's the initial allegations, the felony domestic violence charge he pleads no contest to, and then you're talking about he has those additional allegations again then in October. And so that's a red flag in itself there. And so I do understand the sentiment of people are going to look at it and say, well, the league has decided he could play. Why can't my team trade for him? I think that's an overly callous way of looking at it. But if we're not going to hold other corporations to a higher standard, why are we doing it differently for the NBA or individual teams? And I don't view NBA teams as my barometer for morality either. I'm not looking to them for that. I do think it's a terrible look and I wouldn't mess with it, but I understand other people who at least have the opinion of, well, the league has decided he could play. Why wouldn't we try and do this? From a basketball, I want to make it clear, I just wouldn't want to deal with the PR nightmare. I don't think he's shown enough, as Sam put it, like willingness to reform or even that he has reformed. There's no natural segue for this either, but the basketball implications of it, don't do it for me either. I guess you could look at it as Mike mentioned, it's a wing type guy who can play, and the cost clearly isn't going to be that much because the Suns don't have much to give up. But are you going to unload like whatever best assets of seconds you have left to get a guy who you actually cannot re-sign because his bird rights don't come with you? And then the other thing that's, to me, that I don't think is being talked about enough is Miles Bridges has veto power. And why is he going to approve a trade to a team that can't re-sign him because they don't have cap space? For him, it's more valuable to just stay with Charlotte. They have his bird rights. He could maybe force a sign-in trade to a team he wants to go to. Or if a team like the Pistons came in and got him, he at least knows they're going to have cap space. The Suns are not. And then from the actual basketball fit, yeah, okay, he's a wing who plays, but like for what you need defensively, I call him malleable defensively. That's different from being super talented defensively. And that's just kind of where I land on this stuff. I wouldn't mess with it, touch it with a 10-foot pole if I'm the Suns, even if he is gettable. But I also don't even, moving aside the off-court, like horrendous stuff there, I don't even necessarily understand it from a basketball perspective either.
Yeah, I try my best to not even entertain those thoughts in general, but because it might happen, you have to kind of think about it. I do think, and we can talk about this more after the trade deadline, Sam, I do wonder, are we going to have to deal with an owner who's just hypnotized by every
Michigan
single
State
person
players
who's ever lived in Michigan at any point of their lives?
Yeah, it's possible.
Like, is that every single trade deadline we're going to have to talk about the whatever regardless of whatever else is going on in their lives? Just somebody who lived in Michigan at one point. Now we have to talk about him as a candidate for the Suns. So
it was sort of that way with Robert Sarver and U of A products for a long time. And, I guess.
And look how that worked out for us.
Yeah, I know, but we got a new owner. I guess we got what we asked for, but you can't wish all of the negative stuff away. And yeah, no, I look, if this happens, if it goes through, then I'm sure it'll be talked about to death by a million different outlets, and we'll just be one voice of many. But we will have to have a conversation, I think, about Matt Ishbia and his influence over the team. And if we're really getting what we signed up for, what we thought we signed up for. But in the meantime, hoping it doesn't happen. And I personally am ready to move on to some other what I think are realistic options, but I guess Dan can tell us if they are or not.
It may be less exciting to a lot of Suns fans who were just sort of locked in to Miles Bridges and that's it. But now that we've said that it's not going to happen, hopefully it doesn't happen before the end of the podcast because
Mike, you and I have a track record.
Yeah. Long-time listeners of Dan and I will remember that I was on his podcast talking about the idea of a Chris Paul trade to the Suns. And about 20 minutes in, I said, Dan, Woj just tweeted Chris Paul was traded to the Suns. Let's talk about some actual potential trades that could happen. And Sam, do you want to go first? Throw one at Dan and I, and we'll see what we think.
Yeah, that's fine. So first, I just want to make, also because this is a bit of a primer, and as you said, Mike, maybe some people are tuning in who don't usually tune in. So let's just do a very quick overview of what the Suns have to work with in terms of what they might trade. They've got a ton of minimum contracts / a lot of guys on those minimum contracts with player options or team options for next year. So, that's always easy. They have a handful of trade exceptions, including, I think, some of the most popular ones are the one created from the campaign trade this summer and the one created from the Dario Saric trade to OKC last year. That would expire if it goes unused by the deadline this Thursday. So what is a trade exception? That would just allow the Suns to absorb a player. In the case of Dario Saric's trade exception, making up to $5 million. In the case of campaigns, I think it's 6.5. Although don't quote me on that because I don't actually have it written down.
That's correct.
You're correct.
It can't go over 6.5. It's not one of these 125% scenarios. And 6.5. Period.
Cannot be aggregated with other player salaries. So, for instance, if you wanted to trade campaigns trade exception up to $6.5 million plus Chimezie Metu just to get a player who's worth $9 million, I don't know. That truthfully, there are other ways the Suns could do that, so that's a bad example. But theoretically, if you wanted to do that, you can't do that. If you want to trade for players who make a little bit more, that's where Nasir Little comes into play because he makes about $6 million and his salary can be aggregated with some of these other players. He is a guy who, for anyone who has listened to the podcast this year, Mike and I have talked about him all season long as the player on a intermediate term contract who could be traded. And so that's why most of these trades, if not all of them, are going to include Nasir Little in some way, shape, or form. Going up from there, if you want to get a player who's worth more money than that, I'm talking $15 million or more, the only way to do it is really to build a package around Grayson Allen, and that's another conversation that Mike and I have had in the past. So we'll cross that bridge.
Or Nurkic.
Nurkic. Ooh, I think both are equally unlikely, but we'll have a couple. We have a couple ideas that we'll talk about here. In terms of draft assets, people should know. It should be no surprise that the Suns don't have a lot in the way of draft assets. They're only two, I should say, unprotected second-round picks are in 2028 and 2029 from Memphis. I think in a lot of these deals, we're going to be talking about attaching those picks. They do also have a couple picks in 2024 and 2026, which are already protected. And as a result, personally, I would say carry very little value, but technically you might be able to
Can be traded. Yeah.
Can be traded. You might be able to attach to something. Am I missing anything before we
You are.
to the trades? What am I missing?
They have a 1.1 traded player exception for Tumani Kamara. Is that a soft spot?
Oh, that's right.
Is that why we didn't mention it? I'm only trolling.
Were we right about him being a really great defender, just on a really boring team now? The way,
I don't know if it was on my podcast that I said it or someone else's. I actually shouted you guys out by saying they told me to watch Tumani Kamara before the trade happened. And I fell in love with him, and then Suns fans were absolutely gutted when they moved him in that DeAndre Ayton deal. And I was like, they were right. That dude does a lot of stuff defensively.
We keep talking about needing a taller defender, and he was right on the team.
He guarded.
He can't shoot. But,
No, he can't. And his finishing can get a little weird, but he was guarding Nikola Jokic the other night. I don't know if you guys saw that.
You know who else couldn't shoot?
He guarded
as a rookie?
Devin Booker.
You know who else couldn't shoot as a rookie? Sean Marion. I rest my case.
All right, Sam, throw it out here. Let's.
All right, look, I'm just gonna start with a guy who's been attached in rumors to this team already. All right, so this should not be a surprise to either of you guys. But Royce O'Neal, Royce O'Neal making, I should bring it up, $9.5 million, I think, off the top of my head. The trade I wrote down that you could easily do is Nasir Little, Yuta Watanabe getting sent back to Brooklyn again where he belongs, and 2 second-round picks, those 2 unprotected seconds in 2028, 2029. I think clearly the Nets want a first-round pick, first-round value out of Royce O'Neal if they can get it. Personally, I don't think he's worth a first-rounder, but I will turn it over to Dan. Dan, what do you think of Royce O'Neal, his fit with the Suns, his value as a basketball player in general?
Yeah, from what I've actually heard, I think the Suns would move O'Neal for 2 second-round picks. And so I think that he's kind of right in Phoenix's wheelhouse when you're looking at asking price. And I tend to
correct. Yeah, okay.
I tend to actually be higher on him than the consensus. I know that he's like, to compare him to Dorian Finney-Smith, he's smaller, he's slower, but like this is a dude that could really guard up, and he will knock down a catch and shoot 3, and he can be inconsistent at times. And he is on the smaller end, but given the positional spectrum that he's able to defend, and to then have someone in here who, well, he might actually play for us, and we might actually want to re-sign him to have another salary slot to roll over in future trades.
Yeah,
I get it if you want the wing to have more size, but for 2 seconds and Nas Little and a minimum contract, if I'm Phoenix, I jump at that. And honestly, look, if it's the Memphis picks specifically, I don't know if you're doing better than that as Phoenix, and so. I think, and I'm not even sure, it might have to be like Damian Lee goes out rather than Yuta Watanabe. I actually don't think the money works with Utah.
It doesn't, yeah.
You could just do. But
no, it's a weird thing, Sam.
I may have missed the 110% cutoff because I tried to look over the numbers, but
because Bobby Marks wrote an article that he said Nasir Little, Keita Bates-Diop in 2 seconds for Royce O'Neal, but that doesn't work in the trade machine. But also Bobby Marks wrote it, so. I don't know. I was very confused by that. You almost need another player in there in order to make it work. But maybe it does work. Maybe the trade machine is just not quite catching it. I'm not sure because Bobby Marks seems like the guy. If you're going to ask somebody, that would be the guy.
There's weird stuff with the way minimums are offset too. But if it was really a problem, like Damian Lee makes $200,000 more, so you could move him. As
Dan is bang on, I think, because in my head, Nasir Little was making $6.5 million this year. He's actually making $6.25, and I think that's going to make the difference because $6.25 plus Yuta's 2.3 is going to get you to 8.5, which is and then you're allowed to go up to 110%. Oh, I'm doing a bad job of explaining this, but you're allowed to be up to 10% off, plus or minus, right, off the target. So yeah, I think you'd need the couple 100,000 extra from Damian Lee's salary, and you can make this trade work.
Which it doesn't really change your proposal all that much. It's just it's Nas Little, another small contract, and 2 seconds. I think that's now will be the best offer Brooklyn gets. I honestly don't know, but if it's the Memphis seconds on the table. I think that's a fair. If I'm the Suns, I just do it. But I also think that's a fair offer if I'm Brooklyn as well.
There's also, if you want to keep Damian Lee, who we do like, and he's injured, of course, so I don't know.
Or if he vetoes his trade, he does have veto right.
Jordan Goodwin, if you can do a 3-for-1, which I'm not sure the Nets would even be willing to do because they would have to waive players in order to do that. Jordan Goodwin makes a very low amount of salary. You can find a way to work Jordan Goodwin in as a third player going to the Nets. And maybe, I don't know, they have some really small salary to send back. So there's a way to get there, I think, is the important part. And I agree. We briefly have talked about Royce O'Neal thanks to the Bobby Marks article in the past on our podcast. I agree that I honestly think it's probably one of the best options if we're talking about realistic options for the Suns and what they could get with their assets because they can re-sign Royce O'Neal, and you're trading a young player to a team that might want a young player in Nasir Little, who the Suns are clearly not doing much to develop him at this point because of how desperate they are to win games. That might be a team that actually wants to put the time in necessary since he signed for a few more years after this year. So, and I like to hear that not only do you think it's a good option, that from your perspective, Dan, the assets seem to line up in a way that we are not overvaluing them on our podcast, so that's good to hear.
Yeah, the difference could be if Milwaukee was here, have this Portland 2024 second, which will be number 32 or whatever it is.
Yeah, but, right.
I think 2 seconds is a reasonable value for Royce O'Neal relative to the rest of the market.
Okay, Are you ready for 10 more Nasir Little trades?
We're gonna have to go a little more rapid fire at a certain point.
Here's one I've said on the podcast, and you hopefully haven't heard this one. Nasir Little for Chetty Osman. And
I've not heard you say that one.
And that I would call it just like a straight up, maybe even not even including any second round picks, just because Chetty Osman is an expiring contract for San Antonio. I don't know. I'm assuming he's probably not going to stay there, and they could use younger guys like Nasir Little on their team who could be a wing, and maybe develop on a team that has a pretty good development track record. What do you think of that one?
I feel like I guess you would use Chetty Osman, who's going to hit shots for you, but he is just defensively, I'd be very concerned if I was Phoenix and relying on him to play.
We think of it as like he's Yuta, but he's confident.
We have a couple of options here. I have one too that's just, he's Yuta, but he's capable and not a good defensive player. So can I just throw this one out real quick, Mike? I'm talking about Corey Kispert, who the Suns just played the other night. I would also just toss in the trade exception, the Dario Saric trade exception or something, and a couple second round picks for another player who is talented offensively and not talented defensively.
I think Corey Kispert is actually a really good fit, and he can do stuff as he'll move around off the ball. And I actually think, I know you're saying he's not like a great defender, but he can have some pretty strong stands to where if you have to, we're just talking about Chetty Osman. If you get into a postseason situation and one of those guys has to play real minutes for you, I would actually prefer it to be Kispert because of the way he moves around off the ball. He seems a little bit more confident when he's going to attack an open space, and I think he can give you more defensive optionality than you're going to get out of Chetty.
I like that. That's interesting.
But even if you have to give up a 2029 second round pick from the Memphis Grizzlies, you would sacrifice that for Corey Kispert? Is that what you're saying?
Kispert probably has another year left on his rookie scale, right? And so
he's got a team option for that would be what that is.
So it's it's not just an expiring contract that you can't re-sign, one of the players that we just talked about. So I mean, I'm sure you guys have pointed out, the Suns are trying to win a title with Kevin Durant within Kevin Durant's window. There is no screw these 2028, 2029 seconds.
They're there to be traded. That's literally all they're there for. Yeah, so
I guess the fundamental question is: does a player in the tier of Corey Kispert or Chetty Osman, it doesn't have to be Miles Bridges, but is it a needle moving player, Dan? Do these players, will they play in the playoffs for the Suns? Could they help swing a playoff series? Will it actually matter in the end?
I really believe that Kispert could. Not that I would want him to be I want him to swing a series, but I think he could. And if it came down to the three players we've talked about, Royce O'Neal's still the best option to me. But Kispert is I do think he could be more of a difference maker than I think a lot of people realize, if only because of the off-ball and on-ball gravity. Even when his shots aren't even falling, he'll just work off the ball, and there's a real value in that.
Yeah, I guess there is the possibility, because that's one where we're not giving up anything. You still have Nasir Little to potentially trade to another team, and that's pretty valuable. If you could do that, you're basically sacrificing second round picks and hoping that you could do a 2-for-1 trade to clear up the roster spot for Corey Kispert, trading Nasir Little and somebody else for another player, and that would be pretty valuable for the Suns if they could do that. And the concept of it would be that the Wizards are entirely in asset collection mode, and you're just giving them more picks in order to take a guy from them that maybe isn't part of their long-term future. And I guess the question for Dan would be, how realistic is that from Washington's side?
I wonder if they would view it as selling low on Kispert, but I do think what really helps is that the combination of having Michael Winger and Will Dawkins, these aren't their guys. That's not, they didn't draft Kispert, and so they're going to be more detached to him. We saw it with the Bradley Beal trade. They're just going to be more detached from the situation than the previous regime. So I think it's fairly realistic, and I don't know what team is the one team I would say needs to beat that offer if Kispert really is movable. Is Orlando just needs to come in with something because he would be a really good fit.
I've got an Orlando idea for later. I don't know if
so.
Mike
Then
we're just
hoping that Corey Kispert has a really powerful agent in this scenario. Then now I'm trying to quickly Google who his agent is, because sometimes that can actually. It's good news, Sam. It's Mark Bartelstein.
Oh boy,
is it really? Okay,
it is.
Great. He's a son.
Mark Bartelstein's son is the CEO on the Suns right now. So
wow, that's hilarious.
Yeah. Call it in.
Call it in right now because
I love when stuff like that works out.
That is hilarious, and I almost feel like if I had to place a bet on anything potentially happening now, it's that one.
Also, don't you just feel like when a GM sees a guy play against his team like in the week before the deadline, it just boosts the chance of something happening. Like in the stupid psychological part of it, it's like, oh, Corey Kispert just dropped 16 points off the bench against the Suns, and like James Jones, I'm sure already was like conscious of like who Corey Kispert is, but like suddenly for some reason there's just a little bit more of a chance that it actually happens, like something clicks in his brain. I don't know.
Gambo on the radio today said there are players out there that nobody's even mentioned that the Suns are looking at, and maybe it's Corey Kispert.
There we go. I'm ready to.
I don't.
Nobody but us
credit
said that.
I'd like to interject for a quick second and say I hate that type of reporting.
As somebody who tweeted a cryptic emoji today, I don't know that I can take any hard stance against that.
Oh, hold on real quick. I just got to block you on Twitter.
Earned. How about a trade that I don't think will happen, but I want to get your opinion on it because it includes trading Grayson Allen. Nazir Little and Grayson Allen plus, I guess, second round picks for Dorian Finney-Smith.
Ooh. Man, Grayson Allen's...
Defense, Stan. What do you say?
Know. It's basically you're changing the starting lineup that's been working really well in order to add a little bit of size. And a player who's shooting really well in Dorian Finney-Smith, but the functional shooting of Grayson Allen, regardless of how close the percentages are, is dramatically different if you just look at how they take the types of shots that they take.
I think if push comes to shove, you have to make that deal. But Grayson Allen's been so valuable to Phoenix. I never thought I'd be hung up on Grayson Allen in the Dorian
Well, the
Finney-Smith
question
trade.
is, because this is the issue for the Suns. Now, I should fill you in because we've had these conversations for months now, or weeks at least. You can extend Grayson Allen now. You can offer him up to $17 million a year. Now, trading Grayson Allen, I don't think is off the table in the future for the Suns. But the question is capitalizing on him now for $8.5 million or whatever his salary is, compared to doubling that salary in an extension or even re-signing him in the offseason and then trading him on a higher salary in the future when he's still playing well, hopefully, but now has a higher salary to trade. Is it worth it to capitalize on it now? Because there's a chance he doesn't sign an extension. There's a chance he doesn't sign with the Phoenix Suns. Or is it better to sort of invest in him with more salary in the future and then try to trade him at a higher salary potentially later, assuming he's traded?
I guess it's tough because I don't know what type of standalone value Grayson Allen at like $14 million or something a year would get you. So I think I'd probably lean towards just making the move now. I think it short circuits some stuff long term, but Dorian Finney-Smith, just given the scope of what he's able to do on defense, and look, Grayson Allen's functional shooting matters, but if you have your big three, it's going to matter a little bit less than getting a guy like Dorian Finney-Smith who can come in. He'll be super important if you want to play KD at the 5. I think he would be super important to like how you're going to match up defensively in some of those situations too. So I think I would do it, but I'd be thinking it would take me longer to green light it as the Suns than I think on the surface most people would believe it should.
It's the most conflicted I feel about any trade, and maybe the least realistic as far as what the Nets want, because supposedly they want, I mean, they always say stuff like we want 2 first-round picks or whatever, but like they want a first probably in this scenario. So, and the Suns don't have that. So I'm not sure that Grayson Allen is good. That's the thing, is like they would have a good player that they could potentially sign for the future. So the question is, how do they value Grayson Allen versus a first-round pick if another team was willing to give that up? That's, I think, the issue that we would run into. So from their perspective, what do you think? Do you think they would say yes or no to this trade?
They'd probably say no, but there is inconsistent messaging coming out of Brooklyn, because if you're prioritizing trading someone who's under contract beyond this season for draft picks, when you don't really control your own moving forward, what is the plan there? You're saying you're not going to move Mikal Bridges. You're too high on him. You're hoping a player comes with him. And so then you're clearly invested in actually winning as much as possible now. Well, then why are you trading Dorian Finney-Smith for draft picks. And so in a sense, flipping him for someone like Grayson Allen, if you believe he can actually play and you want to value the functional shooting over what Dorian Finney-Smith is doing for you when you have, a few other wings or 2, 3, 4s on your roster already, like that should actually align more with what Brooklyn's situation should be. But just the messaging coming out of there just seems contradictory and all over the place.
Yeah, I don't get a good read on them either. Sam, do you have any other? I know we've talked about this trade before. Do you have any other thoughts on this one?
No, I think you guys covered it. I wouldn't do this one personally.
It's the one I feel most conflicted about. I kind of lean towards keeping Grayson too. Yeah,
I really feel that way too. I mean, Grayson's been so sensational. I hope he gets to participate, by the way, in the 3-point contest at All-Star Weekend. We're still waiting for news on that. But I wanted, because it wouldn't have been fair to Dan to not come up with my own Grayson Allen proposal here, just to keep things interesting for him. So I racked my brain trying to think of a Grayson Allen trade proposal, looked at all the salaries that we could potentially match. Here's what I came up with. Grayson Allen, Nazir Little, and Chimezie Metu get sent to the Orlando Magic for Wendell Carter Jr. and Chuma Okeke. And let me try and explain this one from both sides. First of all, Suns. Why do the Suns do it? Wendell Carter Jr. is still a relatively young center. He is on a front-loaded contract. He would become instantly, I think, you can correct me if you think I'm wrong, Dan, but the best backup center in the NBA, and would give the Suns essentially 48 minutes of rock-solid play at the 5, where they could continue to throw out KD at the 5 potentially in their death lineups, sometimes, but I get the feeling from Suns management and the higher ups in the Suns organization right now that that's sort of they don't want it to be their first move. They don't want it to be their first punch thrown in a playoff series. They would rather preserve KD's body as much as they possibly can and shore up backup center with a better, a guy that they can have a little bit more faith and trust in if they can. So you make a move like this. Carter is also a much better shooter than Nurkic is. He allows you to play 5 out when he's playing at center. How much would he like the move? I don't know, because obviously he's a young player in the prime of his career and probably doesn't envision himself being a backup. But now to Orlando's side, why does Orlando do it? They are trying to compete. They're 28th in the NBA in three-point shooting, and they just added the best three-point shooter in the NBA in Grayson Allen. Plus, they had some great success with Goga Bitadze starting at center already this season. They could continue to run their center rotation of Bitadze and Mo Wagner. I even threw in Chimezie Metu just to give them an extra body that they could potentially play at the 5 if they were feeling a little bit thin. And I did this one specifically for our friend David, throwing Chuma Okeke into the deal for the Suns because I know he likes Okeke and it helps match salaries, but also just another body who can defend for the Suns.
Can I
don't know
add
if he'd crack the playoff rotation.
Can I add to the Suns' justification? Not that I would do this trade. I'll give my thoughts in a second, but also Damian Lee comes back, maybe gives you.
Yes.
So, for example, Eric Gordon becomes whatever Grayson Allen was, and maybe Damian Lee. Not that he can approximate what Eric Gordon is doing on the Suns, but shooting-wise, he had an excellent shooting season for the Suns last year. Maybe he
was one of the leaders in three-point percentage in the NBA. That's a really good point. And just the last thing I'll say here before I turn it over to Dan, I think you only entertain this deal if a couple of things happen, one of them being a guarantee that Damian Lee comes back in the next 4 weeks and not in April, so that he can acclimate to the rotation and try and approximate a little bit of what you're losing in Grayson Allen. And then also, you're trading 3 guys and you're getting 2 back. Immediately, they're going to head out to the buyout market and hope to add another shooter there to replace Grayson Allen as well. But, Dan, you've been quiet. Tell me if you hate it.
So I love it for Phoenix. The only thing I would take issue with is you saying that Wendell Carter Jr. needs to back up Nurkic because Wendell Carter Jr. is better than Nurkic. And I know he had a rough go when he was coming back from his injury. I think, what do you have, a hand injury or whatever it was? Goga Bitadze is not really playing anymore in Orlando because Wendell Carter Jr. is that important. And so I'd be shocked if you could get him with Grayson Allen as the main attraction. If you could, I understand how good Grayson Allen has been. I would absolutely do it. I would be starting Wendell Carter Jr. He is a fantastic player, and he is, as far as centers go, when you look at both ends of the floor, he is just incredibly plug and play, and he is on one of the best deals in the NBA. And as you both mentioned, he's on the younger side too. That would be a home run acquisition for Phoenix. I would be pretty floored if Orlando moved Wendell Carter Jr. without getting real first-round compensation.
Right. Grayson would be a good fit on their team. That I had no idea about this fake trade that Sam made up, so I'm pretty excited to hear it for the first time as well. Grayson would be a good fit on that team, but yeah, that I didn't realize. Honestly, what stuck out to me about what you just said, Dan, is Goga's not playing. My first thought was, how do we get Goga?
I mean, that's Goga
that
could
stuck
be,
out to me. I'm like, oh, okay.
Goga could easily be your backup option. And
yeah.
you can try and get OKK and Goga together, for Nasir Little, and I don't know, you could figure out something that works. But I was just trying to think, Orlando, one of the only teams in the NBA that shoots fewer threes than us, and they shoot 34% as a team. They obviously, if they want to make noise in the playoffs, I do think they need to add shooting in some form. But you're right, Dan. It's not necessarily at the cost of their young. I wouldn't call them a star big, but they're young big who is critical for them on both ends of the floor.
Love him on the Suns, though, if they did get him. I think that would be
That's a fun one. That was a fun one, Sam. A nice little curveball to throw in there. My impression is the Suns are not trading Grayson Allen, if anyone's worried about that, since we both did that.
So, Mike, you think the Suns would not do that trade then, is what you're saying?
That specific trade? I don't think so. They really
it's interesting, though, because, you're trading a player right now in Grayson who's playing 33 minutes per game for a guy in Wendell Carter who maybe gets you 20, maybe they do an even split of 24 and 24. I don't know how it would work out. But so you are kind of losing value there. It's what you were talking about earlier, Dan, that this is why you valued a wing more than a big in terms of your power ranking. That being said, I just think Wendell Carter's so insanely valuable and talented that he makes up the difference.
My thing there would be, let's just say you got Wendell Carter Jr. now for that package. You could probably turn him around in the offseason and get better than just a first-round pick for him. And to have that avenue open as the Suns would be a pretty big deal. You're not going to get... Interesting. I don't think you're going to get... I mean, maybe you could get a late first-round pick this year for Grayson Allen, which that doesn't really do anything for you. But moving forward, Wendell Carter Jr., I think, is going to be the more useful player, but also the better trade chip as well.
Yeah, and, maybe... I hate to just do the cold-blooded asset guy thing here, but even Nurkic could be available to be traded at that point. And if he plays a healthy season and has his best season he's had in a long time, maybe you could.
You're not allowed to play the lizard asset acquisition guy after you just recommended coffee spots to Yusuf Nurkic on Twitter today. We saw you.
He asked for him. It's true.
I
gave him all my best stuff.
You gave him all of your banging spots, and then you're going to crawl into your little podcast space tonight and be like, I'd rub your hands together and say I would trade him in the offseason.
Hey, you're the one trading for a new starting center here. I'm just saying the obvious.
I was going to back him up. I was going to let Nurkic keep the starting spot.
Okay. Here's a guy that was rumored today that the Suns were potentially interested. I think it was Mike Scotto said it. Is that how you say his name? I've never said it out loud. I'm just realizing now.
I think it's Michael Scotto.
Scotto, thank you. Isaac Okoro for Nasir Little and Jordan Goodwin. Supposedly he's available. Supposedly the Suns are interested. I don't know, a second-round pick? I don't know what the value would be here, but I guess you could potentially make one or two of those second-round picks available. I wouldn't want to. I'm not sure I even like this fit that much, but he gives the Suns functional size in a wing that could defend in a way that he's tall Josh Okogie. He's taller than Josh Okogie.
He shoots better than Josh Okogie.
But he's not a shooter.
He's not a shooter. He's a much better passer and player in transition too.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a good point. So, what do you think about that?
So, from a value perspective, I would do it, but you do run into the same issues with him that you already have, where Isaac Okoro's better off this defending the smaller end of the wing spectrum, where it's basically guards. And so if you're going to ask him to get up to cover those pure threes or some of those combo forwards, that's not something.
Kawhi. Yeah. Ultimately, we're trying to find someone to guard Kawhi in the playoffs.
Right. No, that's not something that you. I mean, he would probably be the best equipped to do it on the roster, or at least close to it. But you're going to run into those issues where it's no one's a great matchup for Kawhi, but he's not. He's going to be better at the point of attack with guard size players than these power wing types. And so, because of his passing, because we see his three ball fall in the regular season, but not so much in the playoffs, From a value perspective, I say yes, do it. But from the fit perspective of the Suns and then using kind of their best non-Grayson Allen assets to get him, I'd probably say no. But he would, in theory, because he's a restricted free agent, you're talking about extending Grayson Allen. If you have Isaac Okoro at a slightly bigger number, it probably opens up other avenues for you. So if it took a second, I would do it. I would be shocked if Cleveland would. But if you're looking at both those seconds, I probably pass. And I honestly think that even if you offered both those seconds to Cleveland, they'd probably say no to. So it might just be like sort of a bad match.
Sam, we haven't talked about Okoro. We don't have to spend too long on this because Gambo shut it down today already. But
what? He did? I didn't even see that.
He did. He went on we call him the Reaper when he does stuff like this, but he went on a real Reaper streak today, just saying no to a bunch of guys that I was already prepping to talk about on the podcast. As
anyone else that we talked about so far today that he said
not that we've talked about yet, but someone that I know that you might bring up next. I will tell you if it is that person.
Well, you know what? Gambo's not. I mean, he's
got a good track record. Yeah.
He has sources. He has knowledge, but it's not an unbeatable streak with him. That's all I'm saying. Okay, so I'm going to bring up this guy regardless if it's who I'm thinking you're talking about. As for Okoro, I let you take this one because I've never been a huge fan.
I'm not super excited about it either, but because it was in a rumor, I thought we had to bring it up.
And it's fine. You know, I've got a list of other guys we might just not get to here before we run out of time, but who I'll just bring up anyway. And he's in that same tier of guys where it's like if he's fine. he's fine. I would talk myself into him.
If we didn't have Josh Okogie and we needed a Josh Okogie type, I would feel a little better about it.
Yeah, but we already have two Josh Okogies. We can't even find minutes for Jordan Goodwin. He's the second Josh Okogie. So it's like, do we need a third Josh Okogie?
Man, Wizards fans really talked up Jordan Goodwin in a way that really has me disappointed. But
Joe House, you did this
on our podcast.
Joe House comes on our podcast and denigrates the name of Bradley Beal for 30 minutes and says, "I love Jordan Goodwin. You guys got a real one in Jordan Goodwin." All right. I'm going to talk about this guy who I'm sure Gambo already shot down, but let's talk about Andre Drummond. Is that who you mentioned?
That's the guy.
Andre Drummond. Oh, man. Don't even tell me the trade. The answer is no.
What?
Here's my thing.
Okay. No, wait, can I tell you the trade? The trade.
No, I want to hear Dan first now. Let's do
No, go ahead, Sam. I'm sorry. It's your podcast.
He fits into the Saric trade exception, and I'd give you like 1 second-round pick. That's all.
No, Chicago should absolutely consider doing it unless they, want to be the face of the play-in forever.
Let me just here's my little spiel. In 800 minutes. Okay, first of all, did you know, Dan?
Oh boy.
Did you know 18.9 rebounds per 36 minutes for Andre Drummond this season is a career high. A career high, Dan, for a guy who I think you could arguably say is already like a top 15 rebounder in NBA history. I don't know if anyone's ever just like ranked them out, but I feel like he might be. In 800 minutes this season, not a lot of minutes, not a ton, he has more rebounds than Drew Eubanks, Chimezie Metu, Bol, and Udoka Azubuike combined, all of the backup forwards and centers on the Suns roster. He also knows Frank Vogel because he played under him in L.A. He knows Kevin Durant because he played with him in Brooklyn. Didn't have long stints in either of those places, but I think there are real reasons to connect him to Phoenix. Now I will let you crap on this idea.
Okay, well, let me add one more thing. The worst in net rating on the Suns of any rotation player is currently Drew Eubanks, minus 3.7. On the other end of that, Yusuf Nurkic, plus 9.3. Every time Drew Eubanks comes onto the floor, it kind of goes badly for the Suns right now. So the bar has been lowered for the Suns as far as the backup center. So I'll preface it with that. So what do you think, Dan?
So it's not because he's not an upgrade over Drew Eubanks, but as you already outlined, like the bar for that is just so low that I don't really know what that means. I would understand Drummond if you had a trade where Yusuf Nurkic went out because he's a bigger salary matcher. But part of what's making Andre Drummond, to me, based off what I've seen and what I've looked at, so effective in Chicago is you look at the lineups, the players he's playing with that are in front of him, and they just have some of the best perimeter disruptive options in the league with Ayo Dosunmu, Javon Carter, Alex Caruso, even Patrick Williams. There is not a lineup in Phoenix where you're going to have 2 or 3 guys who are able to cover up for Drummond so much. He will get exposed, I think, in Phoenix because he'll be responsible for doing more down low. So he will get you rebounds, but he also might not get you as many because his responsibilities are going to increase on the defensive end. And so I just don't love the fit Again, he's an upgrade over Eubanks, so I shouldn't like if you're giving up the 1 second, which if you're Chicago and you're not going to resign him, and if you're Phoenix, you get his early bird rights. There's value in that. I just don't love it. And like Devin Booker the other night kind of talking about the importance of playing with pace, and like Andre Drummond's not really the guy that you're going to want to use.
That's true.
For that.
That's true. That's
So,
another very good point. I'll give you that.
Hey, well, there's one guy I left off the net rating list, number 1 on the Suns, plus 12.4 right now. Bull. Maybe the backup center's just on the team right
Victor
now.
Wembanyama 1.0 according to Kendrick Perkins.
maybe he's just on the team. He's been playing power forward almost exclusively during his best play that he's played for the Suns recently, but once the playoffs come, like I understand what you mean when it comes to Andre Drummond, because you're basically playing like trading for a player that doesn't play in the playoffs anymore. Like you can't play him anymore unless it's like the absolute perfect scenario, perfect matchup where that's the only time he can play in the playoffs in the first round. But anything beyond that, he's often the exact type of player that gets exposed and you can't play. So I understand. I think Suns fans will probably still want it just because of the trauma that has been caused by Drew Eubanks for us.
Well, I mean, like if you're just giving up the non-Grizzlies seconds and then one of these players you don't want anyway and you're fitting him into the Shards trade exception, I shouldn't say don't do it. If that's like the move, I'd be pretty disappointed. I'm not gonna lie.
If it's the move, yeah, no, I totally understand. I think also there remains a question of like, even if you do acquire Drummond, I don't think it's a given if assuming Eubanks would still be on the roster, I don't think it's a given that he immediately steps in and takes Eubanks' minutes. I think
we need to investigate Frank Vogel in that scenario if that's the case. You at least have to try it if you went out and got him.
The Suns, by the way, are missing 1 second-round pick that they could trade this specific trade deadline because they tampered for Drew Eubanks. They were penalized 1 second-round pick. So that's just a reminder of what all the baggage that comes with him. I have another one for the trade exception, and then Sam, I don't know, how many more do you have left?
I got 3 more on my list, but we could just throw them quick.
Let's do some rapid fire stuff.
We'll do a
just
rapid
name
fire.
the names.
Okay. Yeah.
I only have one after. I have 2 left, if we're being honest, but this is the one real one, and the second one's kind of a joke here. So, Sadiq Bey from Atlanta, and supposedly, from what I've heard, he's been available for a long time and for not that much. And he's not been that great this season, so I understand why he's available, but I think there's a chance he's better than Keita Bates-Diop, and for the Suns, maybe that's all it takes. So maybe 2 second-round picks for the trade and put him in the trade exception, and you get Sadiq Bey, or I guess you can say Nasir Little, like if you have to do that for him, and then you try not to give any of the second-round picks for Sadiq Bey. What do you think?
I think I'd probably do it. He's been and he's not really a great defender. I know he was billed as a 3-and-D guy. It's just more he has the size to be
He's
that.
big, yeah.
He's been so inconsistent on offense this year, but he does have a short-term memory, which you can argue is good when you've been watching, let's say Yuta Watanabe be afraid to shoot. So there is that. I'd probably do it. I'm not giving up any of the Memphis seconds for him, though. I'm not a believer in him making that much of a difference, and then you kind of have to figure, well, are they going to keep him when he gets to restricted free agency? So I think it's a worthwhile name, and certainly maybe someone you trust to play more than the options at your disposal right now.
Yeah,
I'd be very curious to see what lineups they're able to run out and be good defensively with, though, if he's on the court. So I think I'd probably do it if the cost is low enough. But didn't they give up 5 seconds to get him? So
Something
I wonder if
like
they're prepared
that,
to eat crow.
Yes, a ridiculous amount. And it is we haven't even really discussed it yet, but in terms of teams trying to one up each other, the second round market in recent trade deadline history has been very interesting of the amount of trades
Crowder.
that have just here's Jay Crowder, who's not very good and isn't going to play for us for the
and
rest
hasn't
of the
played
season
in a
barely.
year.
And hasn't played in a year. Yeah, take 5 second round picks for Jay Crowder. So if the Suns are competing with a lot of offers like that, our 2 second rounders at the end of the decade from Memphis aren't going to do much for us anyway. But it is interesting. What do you think, Sadiq Bey? What's his agent going into restricted free agency? What's their asking price? You think you could get more than the MLE? Because that seems like a hard bargain.
No, I mean, I would be maybe if it's a short-term windfall type situation, but if he's signing if it's guaranteed for 2 or more years, I would think he comes in at under the non-taxpayer mid-level.
Taxpayer mid-level, or something. Yeah, no.
Yeah, maybe even. Yeah.
Maybe even minimum contract you want to say.
Yeah, I was going to say it. Yeah, maybe even, I don't know. But he's young enough that probably not. He might get a little more chance. Yeah.
Honorable mention time?
Yeah, honorable mentions. Yeah. Go
All right.
ahead. Go ahead and
Dan.
give all of yours.
Sure. Let's do it one at a time. Dan, Otto Porter. Thoughts?
I dig it. If he could
So-
stay healthy, I dig it.
2 years ago, only 2 years ago, less than 2 years ago, 21 months ago, Otto Porter was a 20-minute per game player in a final series. That was only 2 years ago. And now, he had surgery on his foot last year, and I believe is healthy now, but just kind of languishes in that Raptors rotation. So I don't think they have any real use for him. Is he a needle mover? I don't know, but he was good 2 years ago, and so I want to bring it up. So he's on the list. Torrey Craig.
Ooh.
Hooray! 3 trade deadlines in a row. Let's do it. I want it.
What
Is
would
he
you
back?
do?
Is he back yet?
I think
that's a
just came
good
back,
point.
or he's going to come back soon. He's been injured. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, for him, for sure. I think he would be a great fit.
you mean that unironically?
No, I mean, it'd be hysterical that they would have to reacquire him
If
again.
Torrey Craig is the move 3 years in a row.
Yeah, but like, I mean, someone
Probable
who's familiar
Tomorrow.
and just
That's the update on him. He's
That would be
probable
one
to
of
play
the.
tomorrow.
Oh, he played against Sacramento 2 days ago, so he returned.
There you go.
But
There you go.
that would be James Jones needs to commit to the bit. It's one of the funniest bits in the NBA if he does it 3 times in a row.
that would honestly be hysterical. But it makes sense. Like, it's not even just trolling. He would help.
Can
He
I
would
just
help.
quickly mention how stupid it was the Suns just didn't pay him and Jock Landale extra money that they were capable of doing now that we're looking for contracts to cobble together to make trades? They could have paid him what he got paid in Chicago because they owned his bird rights and they had the ability to pay extra to him, and they didn't do it, and then he left to another team. They filled him with a player like Yuta or Keita Bates-Diop who just are not as good, and now they have less assets to make a trade. They could have done this at the time and had more options right now, but just want to throw it out there. If we're talking about the entirety of what's happened since Matt Ishbia has come on the team, that could have been money saving there, and that's impacting them right now at this trade deadline. But
Yeah,
you got a third guy.
you're
right?
not wrong there. Although Jock Landale, I don't know what he would have done aside from being dead money, but maybe he would have just been better in Phoenix like he was last year than Houston.
I'm surprised at how bad he's been in Houston. That contract's weird too. It's only guaranteed this year. It's fully not guaranteed in future years. So like, it would have been like a contract that you could trade that just expires on the team that he goes to, which is still valuable.
Is he in their rotation again, or he was out of it for a while? Is he like playing? On
I
a
think
regular
he's
basis?
basically not playing.
No,
Oh,
he's
it's kind of he's third string, isn't he?
He might
Damn.
be bought out. To be honest, he might just be available
Honestly,
for the Suns
Steven
to pick
Adams
up.
might play more than him for the Rockets again this year.
Who's your third guy, Sam?
Last guy, KJ Martin. He's not playing right now. I don't know. Dan has no playoff experience, obviously, but he's an athletic.
You could probably
wing.
protect a second round pick and get him at this point, from what I've heard.
Yeah, I mean, he does like in his best moments, he'll give you some rim pressure and like he could be moved around defensively, but he's another one of those guys where
He gets
has the-
buckets, Dan. He's a hooper. His career high is easily higher than any of the other guys we've talked about today, except for Miles Bridges, of course.
Yeah, but he's also in the same vein of like, you look at him, it's like, oh, you can move him around defensively, but is he actually good defensively? And
Yeah.
again, if the cost was low enough, sure, why not? I'd try it.
I've heard that you can probably get him for a second round pick. I think that's even been reported. So the way I look at it is, if the Suns make a 2-for-1 trade, Nazir Little plus someone, and now they have a roster spot, that's a Nasir Little replacement, essentially. You get another young player that has some upside that you could potentially develop over time, and maybe he becomes a better player on the Suns if you spend time developing him in practices and stuff like that. So, yeah, and maybe they'll even get a G League team someday, and they can send players to a G League team and develop them there. How about Bradley Beal for LeBron James? What do you think?
Bradley Beal probably vetoes that one, right?
Yeah, that's the biggest hurdle. You'd have to. He's the only no trade clause in the entire NBA. You can't do that. But LeBron James, hey, he was in. There was one guy that brought up some sort of LeBron James trade rumors, so I had to bring it up and see what you thought, Dan.
And I think LeBron would be a pretty good fit in Phoenix with Kevin Durant and Devin Booker. I think he'd be okay.
Anything else, Sam?
No, I couldn't think of a joke fast enough about LeBron to keep up with you guys. I'm good. Dan, thank you so much for coming on, man.
Oh, no problem. Thank you guys so much for having me. It's always a blast getting to catch up with you fellas.
One of our favorite guests to have here on the podcast. We appreciate you laughing and having a good time with us. Follow him at Dan Favale on Twitter. Subscribe to the Hardwood Knocks podcast. There's so many places to do it. You could do it on TikTok. You could do it on YouTube. Do it on your podcast apps. And, of course, read everything that Dan writes on Bleacher Report. Is there anything specific that you want to promote, Dan?
No. I would just reiterate, thank you guys for shouting out the Hardwood Knocks podcast. Go check that out.
You're the best.
For over a century, Johnny Walker has shared its bold spirit with the game of golf. Now, crafted with Devereaux Golf, Johnny Walker introduces the Johnny Walker Blue Label-inspired Sunday Golf Bag, elevating the game with sleek design, Blue Label hues, and refined gold accents. Celebrate your hole-in-one with a premium Sunday bag crafted by Devereaux Golf. Submit proof of your achievement to johnnywalker.com/blue-in-1. Please drink responsibly.